On many occasions, we will end up hurting those whom God has sent into our lives to help us change our environment and bless our lives, sometimes without wanting to or ignoring the reality and the will of our Heavenly Father. This story reminds me of the life of our Savior, Jesus Christ, who came into our lives to change them, but many times we hurt him, and we were ashamed of him. But as we get closer, there are special people who come into our lives to give meaning to it and to mark our way, and while we have him by our side, we see how the gray world in which we lived suddenly takes on colors that we had never seen before. If we summarized our lives, if we had to make a representation of what our life should have to be: happy, survivor. She now remembered that being different from others made her feel like a piece that anyone could do with whatever they wanted one day long ago. She had escaped to a party, and as a result of that escape she had become pregnant. However, that had not been the worst. When her little one was born, her aunt had given her the news that although her aunt demanded nothing of her, the desire to now give meaning to her life was removed from the beginning. Everyone had turned their backs on her. Why couldn't she do it? He entered the store grumbling like an ogre. I need a woman. I need a servant. I need someone who has his own cleaning tools. The salesman who had known him since he was a child knew he had not had one good life. He had lived in the town orphanage, and then, growing up, he became an assistant to a sailor who had been a captain but ended up fishing and selling fish to the town. When he died, Maud listened intently, and it occurred to her that achieving her independence would be a good idea because she didn't have anyone who truly cared about her life, and it would also show everyone that she could support herself. I hope Everett left and secretly withdrawn the ad and put it in his pocket with the address in his hand. He walked for hours to find the address of the announcement until he came to meet him. Business that had been left to him by his adoptive father, Captain John Ryan, and in passing he used to visit the orphanage where he had grown up. He considered it his second home. Everett just wanted an employee to be independent. He had many things to do and was too busy to take care of chores. From his own home, the idea of getting someone was strong, but only one woman had applied to his request, and he had not asked himself why he was advised. The words of the orphanage's director, "If someone has applied for the job, give it to them," were enough for her to go looking for Morrow. When she got there, she was there with a smile from ear to ear as she used to be. It would be her first job, or perhaps the only one. Went to his room for his things, and without caring how upset his aunt was, he simply said, "I'm leaving." Moore then began to take care of some things, but he still didn't know what he had to do whenever got home from work. He was sorry to see that everything had continued as he had left it in the morning. He exploded in anger and threw her out of his house, telling her, "This is my house, and this is not going to work." He repeated, "I don't want someone I have to take care of. I want him to take care of me." That night, Mouse, having nowhere to go with his things on the street, was thinking of sleeping outside. In the orphanage, I had to sleep with more than 8 to 10 boys. I felt their feet and their elbows on my back, and sometimes it was so annoying. On many occasions, I just waited for dawn or fell asleep from exhaustion, and after these words, a silence accompanied them on that occasion. Now that they were there sleeping together, both in their innocence, they did not extend the chemistry that there is when a man and a woman sleep together. Town, and she had also told him that now it was the talk of the town. Mouse stammered that perhaps he should marry Ever so that it would not be a reason for gossip or bad comments, but it was just a crazy idea that had crossed his mind. The order in my life: I am the dogs, the chickens, and lastly you. That idea was spinning in his head on one occasion when a friend who worked with Ever came to his house, and when he saw Love, he could not help but smile. "You have a woman in your house," he told her, surprised. Maur innocently answered that she was the employee. "But where do you fit in there?" He asked her again, "Because the house is bigger than you think." Home, but Mao did not understand. The conversation became awkward when Mao said that they both slept comfortably upstairs, which as expected enraged Ever, who accepted a slap in front of the visitor. Mao could not believe it was still sore, sat down and leaned on the only table in Ever's house. Ever's house had begun to have colors since she had arrived from being a lifeless gray house to a little paradise of colors. Then he received a few cents from the confused Everett, who had forgotten that she was just his servant. "Tell me if you want me to stay here," Mouse had said while drying her tears, and since that moment, a repentant Everett has felt like his world is gradually filling with Morrow's pure and colorful heart. Time has shaped them both, and they are ready for each other. They said they slept together, they lived together. She served him food and cared for him, and she even kept forgetting to charge. Now she helped him in the business to keep his accounts, and Ever began to give in Mao. After all, it was very useful in his life. It seemed to reflect now that the always angry Ever had wrapped them in the strangest love that both had ever experienced. When their closest friends married, Mouse devoted himself to creating cards in which he would send notes to all his customers and bills for the fish buyers that Ever sold to, while this passed Ever's house every day and thus wrapped in the different colors and designs that Mao had painted. Her talent did not go unnoticed, and the entire town began to buy her paintings. Many came to that house that had once been gray and lonesome. Although that was what her aunt had told her, she still believed it, so she also convinced herself of that days later. Ever being in the center of the town, she met Morrow's aunt, who asked her to tell Morrow to go see her. In that period of time, the news and Morrow's fame had grown so much that even President Nixon had heard of her and had bought her paintings. But on the other hand, his brother also found out and wanted to get Morrow back in order to become his representative. But when Mao saw him, he remembered what he had done with her, and after selling him one of his paintings throughout his life, what did it matter anymore? She just didn't need him, and even if it was her brother, the pain that he had caused her invaded her memories, and that was the last time she saw him after a few days. Ever told Moores that her aunt was looking for her. Moralesque, listening to this, he took his coat and wallet and left, knowing that he had imposed and forbade him to go. But Mao not only was the master of her own destiny, but at that moment she discovered that she had a part of Everett's heart. In short, she had dominated his heart. He defied and went out to see his aunt, who told him right then and there that the daughter he once had not died, let alone been born deformed and crying. Morrow could not believe it. "I passed her on the way, but never paid attention to her. He only cared about imposing his will on hers. You have only brought sadness into my life," Mao told him. He couldn't take it anymore and got out of his old truck. "He left me," Ever said as he resumed his life without Mouse, whom he had underestimated despite loving her, and that she loved him. Morrow was at a friend's house when the pressure rose in the stubborn Everett, who began to feel Morrow's absence. They finally realized that after that big lie, they could have been content with having their own children. The lie Moore's aunt had told had eliminated the possibility of having someone who had a little bit of both, but when the truth had come to light, they had both been so into it in the years since there were no more chances that they would be parents that life could be sadder. Now Ever still could not believe it innocently. He had never touched her for fear of a simple rumor, and now, in his old age, he simply had to sigh and continue Morrow as a true artist. Despite all of their love, the days were more loving than a man and a woman could walk, both full of compassion for each other. You could see an Ever completely in love. The summer had been very warm in their small but cozy house. The autumn caressed their skin and gave them. The coolness also gave. The winter arrived. Both had spent many seasons together and were preparing to go through one more winter. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so that you receive more stories like these on your cell phone, tablet, or wherever you connect. What did you think of this story? Without a doubt, the principles and teachings embedded in it apply to our lives. Don't move. Stay there. I'll tell you another story later. Mr. Alfonso Ruben Ruiz was on top of a building, in his large and cold office. He had heard about the Ruiz family's great fortune everywhere, and sometimes he stopped to think, looking at the other buildings, that there was a void that he had not been able to fill for a few years at his 73 years. Being a prosperous and wealthy oil businessman seemed to give him a sense of superiority, but he had always tried not to appear so that the purchasing power he had could make him live and have what he wanted, but nothing could fill that void. Since then, he understood that money could buy everything and give you a better life. However, he could not buy the most precious things, such as health and life. Pain carried him by an inch, but now, not only that caused him regret, but after the death of his beloved wife, his 3 children, Armando, David, and Cecilia, had gotten engaged. And although they lived in the same city, they spent their time traveling with their families for events such as the birth of their own children. They had absorbed them in such a way that they no longer came to see him. What pain and sometimes shame caused him to ask them to come see him, and when he left, he was willing to go visit them. They all said and agreed that they were traveling on vacation. She wanted to clear her mind a bit because she knew that the distraction would at least somewhat mitigate her feelings for Soledad. For this, she walked through the offices of her company and looked around to see if she could find someone to go out with, someone trustworthy. She looked at her face again. He continued walking while many of his employees greeted them with great respect. He was not always walking through the corridors, he always passed, and he sat in his office, and from there he planned and organized everything. While he was doing this, he observed everyone in their affairs and responsibilities. However, when he was about to, the man did not know that the 73-year-old man who was next to him was nothing more and nothing less than the owner of the million-dollar company for which he worked. Don Alfonso suppressed his annoyance for a moment and laughed. "How much do you earn for doing the job?" Maintenance of the facilities asked him for $900 a month. "I hope it was 1,000, he said and spat on the ground. You can imagine that the man untied his tongue. I had believed that since that old man was one more employee and you told him, well, I'm going there too. Oh well, at least you studied, and I imagine you spent the $2,000. Look, I'll arrange for your salary to reach $2,000. What do you think? Oh, little by little, can you do that? Promote employees and buy everything for this company, so that amount would be good for me. I have a sick wife, and I've been with the company for over 6 years, and I do my job well," the man assured, before adding, "Hey, I'm sorry for what I said." "Do you want to go for a walk?" asked Don Alfonso. "I'll go do some shopping for the company, friend, but I can't move from here because my shift still ends in a couple of hours." "Well, I'll make a call." "Your name is asked by Mr. Alfonso Guillermo," answered the man while he animatedly took off his gloves and collected the cleaning utensils. "Your name is Guillermo," answered the man. "Oh, some things are more in the center of the city," said the man. "Well, I know the city very well now, so tell me what you want, and I'll get it for you." "Hey, do you think they're going to fire me after this escape?" "I doubt it, my friend," Don Alfonso said. "I already coordinated that." "Well, I hope so," replied the man, "because we're having a good time." And while they were talking about this, the man noticed a sporty Mercedes-Benz and said, "Hell," while holding his head. Don Alfonso, as his wife spends her final days of life, they have removed part of her stomach, and once I promised her that we would travel in a luxury car, and now I am over 60. The good thing is that the company admitted me to its inclusion program, and well, I have still strength. You know that age sometimes dampens our spirits too. Well, I also have to try it. Don't worry, I'll fix everything. Well, friend. Oh, and let's go get your wife, said Don Alfonso Guillermo, the man in charge of cleaning the administrative area of the building. He couldn't believe it. His life was going through a unique experience. Don Alfonso signed the papers and they drove out to pick up the cleaning man's wife. What should I do to get promoted? Asked the cleaning man. Well, I only know what you do, and surely the owner will know about you. Don Alfonso answered that thought. It was recorded in the mind of that man when he arrived, and it was indeed just as he had told him. The woman was taking her last breaths. It was the best experience they had ever had. They had to live after a long time. They had driven for more than 16 hours, and they had only made one stop. The conversation had become so entertaining that by the time they got to the lake, they realized that painting. The next day they opened the convertible, and the woman from that man had passed away. You can imagine the sadness like this. Later, with much pain, they buried her in the same cemetery of that town. Then they arrived. From there, the view of the valley was beautiful, and the silence said a lot. Both men had lost something or someone before reaching that place, and neither of them had reached it. You know, I have 3 children. I have given them everything. I have supported them. I have given them work. And when they were supposed to have more time to come see me, they bought houses far away and spent it traveling. I have done everything for them. And now I am here alone if it weren't for you, my good friend Guillermo. Without a doubt, we have different stories in the same world. Lermo, and now that he isn't here, the friends hugged each other, as if 2 worlds had met to taste a piece of the other's life. If my children depended on me, I would have already told them that there is no more work and that my business has gone bankrupt, he said, before laughing. Upon hearing this, the man kept thinking and making more jokes. However, Don Alfonso had decided to only listen to that part. Do you think it would work? What did the distracted man say about cutting off his livelihood? My children, my good friend Alfonso, stop feeding the chickens and they will come to chop the sack of corn. He wondered if that strange idea would really work after that conversation. Don Alfonso coordinated the rental of a Modesto apartment and he settled there and invited his widower friend and my things to live with him. Just follow me, and you will do what I tell you. He announced to his children the state of the company, and not only that, but he would cut their salaries and their percentages to try to reinvest and thus save the company. As you can imagine, incredible as it may seem, the 3 of them instantly stopped what they were doing and took the first return flight to find out how that had happened. Don Alfonso then planned a dinner at his house where he would explain in detail what had happened and what they would do now. His friend Guillermo was preparing to get everything ready as expected. Guillermo was surprised. Look, friend, I have. The owner of the company asked me to get everything ready, said Don Alfonso. Well, now everything makes sense, said Guillermo. The man had been amazed at how immense the house was. Up to 100 people could live comfortably, my friend said. You will take care of it. Receive and serve the guests, of course, count on me, Guillermo said, who did not know who he was helping, so the day arrived very early. The supposed guests were accepted. Guillermo, he attended them with great kindness and hoped that his efforts to get everything ready for the meeting could attract the attention of the owner of the company, whom he wanted to meet in person. He could be promoted. He thought that idea had not been lost on him. Perhaps it was his time. It had been said that's how the guests arrived one by one. The attendant man now seemed familiar to him, the faces of those who arrived. However, he waited for the owner to arrive, whom he still believed he did not know. It was Don Alfonso, who had disappeared for a few minutes, but after this the murmurs between the attendees was endless. Then he appeared dressed in his best suit. He brought a pot, and after him Guillermo. With the rest of the banquet, both served the guests. As how special the children were, of course they were not hungry. They were disconcerted. The mere fact of thinking that soon their luxuries would end, their trips, their pleasures. They had their hearts on their hands. Guillermo, on the other hand, was waiting for the main place, waiting for the owner, when suddenly, without him recovering or noticing, Don Alfonso sat and said, "Seat," and said, "Welcome." Guillermo's smile changed to amazement. He could not believe the multiple images what they had experienced went through their minds. "Can you sit down, my friend?" said Don Alfonso, his daughter. Then she recognized Guillermo. "He is not the cleaner. I hired him, father." "What is he doing in our house?" "Our daughter Guillermo is a great friend of mine, and now he is my administrative assistant, but we'll talk about that." "Children, I'm sorry to see you bothered on your trips. I just wanted to see you together at home again like in the old days with the company." Nothing really happened, so while he was still talking, one of his son's father interrupted him. "You made us come for nothing." "It's not for nothing, children. I missed you," said Don Alfonso. "You invented all this just to see us," said the other son, "but we did talk on video Mata every day." On the other hand, the daughter, all at that moment, showed their discontent. Don Alfonso's heart could not resist such hardness. "How can you be so insensitive?" he said, and stood up from the table. "Finish eating and go to the living room. There I will give my dispositions. And if you want, you can leave later." Guillermo now understood everything. After a few hours in the room, Don Alfonso plucked up his courage and would teach them the lesson that he had not given them children as children. "They are relieved of their duties because I consider that I do not need them, since the managers they have hired to take their place are doing well. Guillermo will help me with that, because only a good man is enough to look after your interests if you still want to work and give your life and pleasures. The machinery warehouse is available. As you will understand, the machinery workshop was the worst place to work there. The hydraulic mechanics workshop was heavy machinery, and there was plenty of grease and dirt because all the machinery was maintained there, and Mr. Alfonso, knowing this, added the day that they learned to value how things are achieved. I will let them return to the offices of the company." And saying this, he went to his room. They all complained and tried to follow him, but his personal security prevented them. Guillermo was in charge. The children had no other option but to accept, and there they learned what it really was to work for more than 2 years. Guillermo, he kept them there until one day they understood what it really meant to appreciate the effort their father had made, and above all that they owed him. They were ashamed of everything, and even though they reneged against their father's decision for a long time, they had finally understood. Until that moment, they hadn't even gone to see him because of how upset they were, but they agreed. So they started going to spend time with him, and that's how they would make it to the weekend. However, when the day arrived at the door of his huge house, they only discovered that his father had already passed away in front of him. Guillermo cried as if he were a brother. There was everything now: the lesson, time, money, but his father was gone. Guillermo was crying because after 2 years of working supervising the entire company, a document came into his hands together with a check. "My dear friend, if you think my children deserve to return to the offices of the company, I leave it to your discretion. Thank you for being a good, faithful, and loyal friend. You have been in the best and worst moments. I now promote you to the position of general manager, and don't worry about anything. My lawyer, he's going to take care of all that. Just keep an eye on my interests while you can. This is your first check." The man, who had only been an assistant, now began to open that envelope, and he couldn't believe it, and there was a small note that said about the liquidity: "The salary you think you deserve," and followed by this there was a blank check there. The millionaire father had taught his children a great lesson, who did not stop lamenting. "Now I am in front of the grave of my great friend Alfonso the First, almost have no strength left, and soon I will meet with him." Well, I hope you enjoyed this incredible story. Don't forget to watch the suggested video and share this stories with some friend. See you in the following video.